This episode of RetroBlasting is brought to you by Yojo Outlet and Museum Center. They know vintage toys, and when it comes to vintage toys, knowing is the entire battle.
I got it! Wow!
Here it is, the U.S.S. Flagg aircraft carrier.
In 1985, I was leaving the first grade and heading into the second. That previous Christmas, my big gift had been the G.I. Joe Whale hovercraft. A stark departure from my usual Star Wars fixation. Whether it had been seeing the Revenge of Cobra miniseries, a toy commercial I saw, or a picture in a Christmas catalog, the Whale ran circles around Kenner's Imperial shuttle as far as I was concerned. Up until that point, my G.I. Joe toys were relatively few. I'm pretty sure this is all I had prior to the Christmas of 1984, all randomly gifted to me in 82 and 83. But Star Wars was fading away, and I was seeking new adventures. Toward the end of 1985, as I entered the second grade, little did I know that Hasbro's G.I. Joe would soon ascend from simple action figure line to immortal legend. I had considered beginning this video with some boilerplate history of G.I. Joe and Hasbro, and the path that led to the release of the simultaneously famous yet infamous aircraft carrier playset, well known to Generation X as the U.S.S. Flagg. But the truth is, the business path to the Flagg and its various appearances in the comics and cartoons is irrelevant. None of that can adequately describe what a legend the Flagg is to the real American hero generation. Past isn't even close to prologue in this instance. The toy was a phenomenon in itself, and that legend is not tied to its appearances in other licensed media. Unlike most other toys, the Flagg isn't remembered because of its appearances in comics and cartoons. Its mythos is completely apart from that. More than 3 decades after the toy's release, those of us who were there as children still remember the feeling of awe just hearing about it. Until we saw a picture of it ourselves, we didn't believe what other kids were saying. Even now, we continue to talk about this toy with the same reverence, grandeur, or disdain that we did as kids. And the reason is simple. The U.S.S. Flagg was the largest toy ever made for an action figure line. At 7.5 feet long, it wouldn't fit in the bedrooms of most 80s kids. Add to that the $100 price tag in 1985, and most parents balked at their kids when they asked for the gargantuan thing. The size and the price point kept all but the richest or the most spoiled kids out of the running for the U.S.S. Flagg, and because of that it became a myth at the schoolyard. Some kids claimed to own it, but a lot of them were lying because they never invited any of us over to verify it. Because of that, most kids never even saw one in the physical world. The Flagg was something seen only in Christmas wishbook catalogs and G.I. Joe toy brochures. But I saw the Flagg, and not in a store. In the second grade in the late summer of 1985 in Nashville, Tennessee, I was invited over to the house of a friend, Philip Mattingly. Philip had the Flagg, and it took up the entire length of his room. And I personally, with my own eyes, watched him get down off his bunk bed and walk across the deck of the Flagg to his dresser. Keep in mind, we were little kids then, and the plastic was very new, so the Flagg didn't completely buckle under his weight. But there was something else notable from that memorable encounter. The Flagg didn't become an obsession for me. I didn't leave his house feeling deprived that I didn't have a Flagg for myself. In fact, my most vivid memory from my visit was both of us going out into his driveway and playing with his Mauler MBT tank. In the years after college, when I started collecting again, I've mulled often over the Flagg many times. My peers continue to talk about it most excitedly, and only very few had it as kids. I never got excited about the Flagg to that degree after that visit to Philip's house. But as a serious collector, and now the host of a vintage toy channel, it's a subject that's unavoidable. In the past few years, I've made public statements about my take on the Flagg. There are playsets that are legendary because they're huge, like the U.S.S. Flagg aircraft carrier. But is it great? Because what it is now is a $2,000 toy table. Not to get too harsh on the matter, but notice the kids are playing with everything else in the photo. It's like a kid's fantasy coffee table. And even been quoted by notable G.I. Joe reviewers like FormBX257.
Now, Michael French of RetroBlasting once had the opinion that kids played around this thing rather than with it.
So when an eagle-eyed RetroBlasting supporter, Andrew, alerted me to a U.S.S. Flagg for sale in the summer of 2016, I had a decision to make. Do I remain ambivalent? Or do I listen to that very brief version of myself when I was 6 that was bowled over the first time I ever heard about the enormity of the U.S.S. Flagg? This flag had all the rare parts, but it needed some attention. Oddly enough, it was the work it needed that made the decision for me. Its imperfections piqued my interest. I disassembled the carrier and brought it back to RetroBlasting HQ, where I carefully broke it down into its individual components and assessed the condition. I found cracking, broken tabs, and yellowing plastic hiding under a very well-done spray paint job. While Chris Cooper from Yojo Outlet was trying to track down replacement parts, I realized there was another concern that no amount of eBaying could solve. The flaw in the design of the flag was the hull. There isn't one. The design uses this plastic skirt wrapped around a series of 9 plastic trusses to give the illusion of a hull, while the carrier looks like it's sinking into the water. That means once the U.S.S. flag is built, you can't lift the vessel or even move it without disassembling it. But there's a fairly simple solution thanks to the G.I. Joe YouTube channel G.I. Joeberg based out of South Africa. These guys designed a second hull by utilizing a wooden platform with crisscrossing walls to match the footprint of the flag's trusses. The end result is a flag that stands at twice the height on a solid platform, with room underneath to stage vehicles as big as the Whale and the APC. It was an upgrade that was too good to pass up, so before we even think about restoring the actual toy, the first thing we have to do is raise the flag. Fixing the flag, because it was under-engineered. This must be dependent on the...
There's a documentary called It Doesn't Have to Match the Shape, it just has to match the...
You know who taught me to paint? Mr. Miyagi. Paint the fence, Daniel-san. Paint the fence.
The color we're using is flint gray. Anyone who doesn't get that shouldn't be watching this video.